Autumn 1944. How dangerous are your enemy's civilians? Are they, after all, not the very source of your enemy's power? Do they not deserve the same torment you so easily dispatch on their soldiers, and they on you? In World War II, that seems a universal sentiment, and as the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy carry out their war of conquest across Western-held Asian colonies beginning in 1942, concentration camps for Westerns pop up across the territories the Japanese purport to have liberated from colonialism. As Christmas of 1944 approaches, over 100,000 men, women, and children have suffered the squalor and arduous life of a wretched camp system coming on 3 years. The hope that is on the horizon as news begins to filter through of approaching Allied forces is a mixed blessing, because that advance comes with increasing terror by the Japanese captors. Will salvation come in the form of liberation or death? This is War Against Humanity, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus, Olsson. For those Western civilians unable to escape the Japanese conquest of 1941 and 42, the first stage in their new nightmare is a ritual humiliation. The Japanese invaders are keen to demonstrate to their new Asian subjects that they have overthrown the European racial order. In Hong Kong, deliberately disheveled Western civilians are marched past the local population en route to the internment camps. Other civilians are loaded onto lorries and driven around Kowloon in a reversal of the usual racial dynamics. The Japanese force some Westerners to pull carriages, while Chinese and Indian residents ride as passengers. These shows may provide some satisfaction for the Asian colonial subjects watching on, but they're little more than a charade. The people of Hong Kong, like the rest of the Asia-Pacific, have merely exchanged one colonial ruler for another. After being used as propaganda pieces, the Westerners are frog-marched into a variety of camps in Japan's new imperial possessions. By the summer of 1942, the Japanese have imprisoned a total of 131,000 Allied civilians, about 82,000 of whom are women and children. The camps themselves are ad hoc facilities using whatever shelter is available: schools, warehouses, universities, hospitals, and civilian prisons. They vary wildly in size. One of the smallest is on Sumatra, which holds just 4 people, while 14,000 people are held in one camp on the island of Java. The Japanese make it clear from the start that they will not be treating their prisoners with any particular care. There are a few reasons for this. There's the racial aspect that I've already mentioned. Second, Japan has signed but not ratified the 1929 Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War, and although Japan states in 1942 that it will follow the rules of the convention, it quickly becomes clear that this is lip service rather than any meaningful commitment. On top of all of this, Japan also sees an opportunity to avenge the poor treatment of their own civilian internees, particularly the 2,115 Japanese nationals interned by the British at the Puranakuya camp near Delhi in India. By early 1942, reports of flimsy tents collapsing and flooding and heavy rain, of inadequate food, sanitation, and medical facilities in that camp reached the Japanese. When they protest the issue, the British respond that the conditions in Puranakuya are superior to those in other camps. Nonetheless, by the end of 1942, 106 of the Japanese internees will be dead, mostly from dysentery and beriberi from chronic vitamin deficiency. So, when the first European civilians arrive at Changi camp in Singapore in March 1942, they are informed by the commandant that, when we consider the way in which Japanese internees have been treated by the British, we feel we cannot give you freedom or an easy life. Moreover, the Japanese see their civilian captives as a source of labor, and they waste no time setting them to work. Men and women are separated in the camps, and the types of jobs they undertake vary considerably. At Batu Lintang camp at Kuching on Borneo, POWs and male civilians work as dock workers and in timber yards at Kuching Harbor on the Sarawak River. Other prisoners work in an old mercury mine nearby at Dahan. A subcamp is set up at Batu Tujuh to build a runway. When the runway is done, the prisoners are tasked with refueling the Japanese Mitsubishi Zero fighters that land there. But the Japanese quickly put a stop to this work when the prisoners sabotage a few fighters by urinating in the fuel. Women's work is generally less arduous. At Batu Lintang, the women are charged with making and repairing clothes for the Japanese army. Later, the Japanese also send them out in the nearby fields as agricultural laborers. But the women in Batavia on the Dutch East Indies have a particularly hard time. They are charged with clearing sewage from overflowing latrines, hauling and breaking up furniture into firewood, cleaning the giant kitchens, and repairing the fence that imprisons them. Some women from across the camp systems are forced into sex slavery as comfort women, either through outright coercion, desperation, or after being tricked into accepting false offers of more favorable work away from the camps. Children are also expected to work. Up to the age of about 15 or 16, they do so alongside their mothers. Knowing their children are relatively safe at least gives these women some comfort. But for mothers of older boys, this is only temporary. They fearfully count down the days until their sons are packed onto lorries and transferred into a camp for adult men. They know that they may very well never see their sons again. Whatever job the prisoners are doing, they'll be doing it on a near-empty stomach. At Batu Lintang, all adults receive the same rations, whether they're male or female, civilians or POW. The initial rice ration is just 312 grams per day. This is supplemented with local vegetables like kangkong, water spinach. Every 10 days or so, there's some type of meat, usually offal or a poor quality cut, unfit for serving to Japanese soldiers. The Japanese provide some fairly measly treats each Christmas, and in 1942 the prisoners received about 60 chickens to share between 1,000 men. When looking back on her time at Batu Lintang, an internee named Hilda Bates will recall that, "I realized how comparatively fortunate we women had been compared with the soldiers. We women drew the same rations as the soldiers, which, though insufficient, served us better than the male prisoners, who do manual labor and in any case need more than the female sex." But even with the less arduous work, hunger is a constant companion for the women, just like the men. Across the camp system, prisoners are reduced to catching and eating passing wildlife like snake, lizards, and frogs. Slipping through the fences to barter with locals or setting up smuggling arrangements is always a possibility, but comes with the risk of a severe beating or even execution. As the war turns against Japan, the captors cut the food supply even more and tighten up the already harsh discipline regime. The Japanese are especially fearful that Allied intelligence services will work to mobilize the hundreds of thousands of Allied POW and civilians in some sort of insurgency, or as part of a plot to spread political agitation in the occupied territories. Fear of that increases in September 1943 when Force 136, a unit of the British Special Operations Executive SOE, carries out a raid on Singapore Harbor. They sink 7 Japanese ships and damage several others. In retaliation, on October 10th, the Kempeitai, the Japanese military and secret police, raid Changi camp. The prisoners are forced to stand outside in the hot sun for an entire day while the police search for radio transmitters. Those who end up being punished are detained in cramped cells where the only source of fresh water comes from the lavatories. They are denied food and medical care. The Japanese deploy a whole range of physical and mental torture. One internee describes the torture of a J. Leonard Wilson, the former Bishop of Singapore. The Japanese accuse Bishop Wilson of running a spy network throughout Malaya via his church contacts. One internee recalls how during the torture sessions, Bishop Wilson is tied face down on a table and flogged with ropes, receiving more than 200 strokes from 6 of the guards, working in relays, and was reduced to a state of semi-consciousness for 3 days. The bishop survives his ordeal, but 15 other men die under interrogation in what becomes known as the Double Tenth Incident. When the surviving torture victims return to Changi camp, they are unrecognizable to their friends. There is a similar atmosphere of suspicion and growing alarm at Stanley internment camp in Hong Kong. Already in October 1943, 6 internees are executed by shooting or beheading for possessing a radio. They follow 3 Chinese policemen executed for giving cigarettes and tobacco to the internees. One internee notes the growing cruelty of the guards. Face slappings became frequent. Sometimes people were beaten up unmercifully for most trivial offenses. During air raids, which were now becoming more frequent, the guards usually lost their heads. As 1944 comes around, the Allied pressure increases and life in the camps deteriorates further. Batu Lintang camp has reached a new depth of hell. Like the other camps, there is an increase in brutalization. In June, a group of internees are questioned, tortured, and charged with plotting against Japan. Their crime? Desperate for news of the outside world, the men have been caught reading Japanese propaganda newspapers smuggled into the camp. 5 of these men will be shot next year. Rations are now approaching their lowest level across the camp system. In the Dutch East Indies, the women are reduced to just half a cup of tapioca gruel every day. At Batu Lintang, the Japanese will eventually cut the rice ration by almost 2/3 to just 113 grams per day. The already insultingly meager treats that the prisoners received each Christmas in 42 and 43 have now essentially disappeared. Last Christmas, the female prisoners at Lintang received just 1 turkey to share between 270 women and children. This year, the internees will receive nothing but a single egg. In November, Hilda Bates writes of the situation at the camp. We are having a particularly hungry period, and I can quite truthfully say that our mouths water and that we slaver as dogs do before meals. Some of us find it advisable to rise slowly after lying down, as due to malnutrition, any rapid movement is apt to cause dizziness or even a blackout. One morning recently, I awoke and discovered to my horror that my sight had become very dim. Later, I realized this was due to vitamin deficiency in our poor diet. The prisoners at Batu Lintang will spend Christmas 1944 in a state of starvation, and things will only get worse in 1945. Starvation and diseases like typhus, dysentery, and beriberi will take their toll ever more harshly. When the camps are liberated, many of the internees will be emaciated, skeleton-like figures. Often they will be barefoot and dressed in rags, with their clothes having fallen apart or being bartered away for survival. But they are at least alive. Many others will not be so lucky, as Hilda Bates will write in June 1945. I am horrified by the increased number of graves in the burial ground. Deaths are now so frequent that a party of grave diggers is now permanently employed and given extra rations in order that they will have strength to dig. Peacetime annual mortality rates of the time hover around or should be just under 1% in a population. So for 3 years, about 3% would be expected to die natural and accidental deaths. But the internees are mostly younger, healthy people, and a true rate of over 3 years should be closer to 1%. The death rate of camps in British Malaya, which includes Batu Lintang, will be close to 5%. The same in Hong Kong and in Japan itself. Camps in the Philippines will reach 6%, while the Chinese camps are only at 3%. Most deadly of all the camps is the Dutch East Indies, where death rates approach 13%. In all, 14,657 deaths will be recorded, just over 11% of the 131,000 internees, close to 4 times normal mortality rates. These death rates are not as high as for the Allied POWs in Japanese camps, which soared to between 25 and 30%. But when we consider that Allied POWs held in Germany die at a rate of about 3 to 4%, and that for German POWs held in Britain and the USA, the death rate is believed to be less than 1%. It's clear that these Allied civilians who have never fired a shot against the Japanese, and many of whom are women and children, are being subjected to particularly horrifying treatment. At the end of the war, there will be a grim reminder of just how horrific this treatment is and how much worse it could have been. Australian troops will finally liberate Batulintang on August 15th next year. While searching through Japanese papers, they will find evidence of the horrific fate intended for the internees. 2 documents give orders for the murder by poisoning, shooting, bayoneting, and burning of all 2,000 men, women, and children in Batulintang. Liberation has come not a moment too soon. The Japanese will have scheduled the first executions for just a few days later on August 17th and 18th. Whether it's German civilians being killed under a rain of Allied bombs, Europe's Jewish population being slaughtered in the industrialized murder of the Holocaust, Stalin's campaign of murder and deportation in Eastern Europe, or these Allied civilians wasting away in wretched prison camps, this conflict has shown once and for all how little protection civilians have from the ravages of modern war. There will be a valiant post-war effort to protect the innocent in the future. But look today towards Ukraine, Nagorno-Karabakh, China, Israel, Syria, Palestine, Sudan, or Myanmar, and it seems that the concept of sanctity of civilian life is still little more than whispers swallowed in the pyroclastic flows of inflamed fear, glowing self-righteousness, and burning hatred. Never forget.